Dear students, GPS CLAT Academy at Gyanodaya, a senior secondary school at Sikar, supports its students in their CLAT preparation. We have started a lecture series which will be delivered to you on a daily basis on YouTube. The lecture series revolves around discussion of mock papers. You can request us for the concerned mock papers. If you intend to join us in our daily discussions, you are most welcome.
Question number 52.
152.
1-5. All right. So the article basically talks about linguistic federalism. Language anywhere and everywhere has been an emotive issue. Therefore, one has to deal with language very carefully. You will recall that at the time of independence, we had this as one of our goals, that we will organize our states on the basis of language. You must have read this in your political science, in your constitution at work, that yes, we will organize. But then the project was shelved, basically because there was a feeling that linguistic considerations would be divisive. And there is good reason for that, because culture is less of a cohesive force, rather it becomes a divisive force. Cultural cohesion soon becomes the moment heterogeneity comes into cultural cohesion, heretical cultures come in, then the cultural cohesion is lost and cultural hegemonization starts. Competing cultures start exerting their influence for greater followership, right? And then the struggles between competing cultures start. For example, we are aware of the Shia and Sunni sects. Then we are also aware of the Protestants and Catholics, the kind of conflicts between them. It is the magnanimity of Hindu religion that you have Buddhism, you have Jainism, and all these are offshoots from Hindu religion, and you have parallelly you have Hinduism flourishing. But then this is rare. This doesn't usually come about very frequently. This is the tolerance is the hallmark of Hinduism. Though that is not to say that Hinduism has not been a divisive force. It is socially, it has divided the society into the Varna system, and because of that, you can see the huge problem that is coming in the way by way of reservations. There was no need of reservations, and there was no need of any affirmative program, except probably on the basis of say EWS, economically weaker sections of the society. That kind of reservation one can understand, because lack of economic resources poses so many challenges in the way of people at every step of life. Now, the cultural influence, as we know, has been more of a divisive influence rather than a cohesive influence. So, what is the prescription? The Supreme Court, the Law Commission of India says, look, be careful. Please don't stop the passions ignited by language. Please go slow. And the constitution framers also were also aware of this understanding, and they were aware of what had happened on the grounds of language in which part of the world. There were various secessionist movements in various parts of the world. They were aware of all those problems, and this is a testament to their learning and to their awareness that they did not impose any national language. They left it only Hindi as the official language. and they left it there. They did not go forward because they could foresee that look, there could be a problem. Along historical lines, the apex court and the law commission thereafter also have been saying that we should have a linguistic federalism. That is to say, we should have a system wherein the regional languages are not throttled, but they are allowed to prosper. We have a multicultural society, a pluricultural society, and therefore we should maintain that cultural heterogeneity which we have. We should celebrate our cultural heterogeneity instead of converting it into a cultural homogeneity. Cultural homogeneity is going to be there's going to be a pushback against the forces of cultural homogeneity. Therefore, it is better to not invite such pushback and to respect the cultures of everyone, show tolerance and tolerance towards them, right? So this is what the article talks about. In between, the article also makes a reference to Article 29 of the Constitution, Article 30 of the Constitution. 30 talks about the institutional part of what is talked about in Article 29, that those minorities which are based either on religion or on language shall have the right to preserve and protect their identities, that is, their language, script, and culture. They have the right to protect them. So the Constitution framers has the wisdom to preserve the diversity instead of stoking the flames of division or fissures by insisting on one national culture or homogenizing culture or hegemonizing culture. They steered clear of all this, and they stated that wherever there is a minority culture, you have to respect it. You have to respect the choice of parents to educate their children in terms of their own philosophic and moral outlook, and in terms of their own cultural traditions, in terms of their own mother tongue. All these cultural rights must be respected. This is what the Constitution also provides in terms of Article 29. And Article 30 is basically an institutional expression of what Article 29 provides. Is that okay? Now let us, having said that, now let us examine what the questions are saying and how you have handled the questions. This is 152, right? So you have a state government in India introduced this. Should we take it up? Yes, 50%. So state government in India introduces a policy mandating the exclusive use of Hindi language in all government schools and legal proceedings within its territory. The policy also discourages the teaching or use of regional languages in schools, leading to protests from various linguistic communities in the state. The protesting groups file a petition in the Supreme Court, discuss the outcome of the petition. So what should be the correct answer in this? What should be the correct answer in this? Government policy is good? No, it is not. Doesn't seem to be, right? This one doesn't seem to be. Second one, the policy is bad. Yes, it is bad, right? But this is not the answer which has been specified here. Nevertheless, this seems to be an equally good answer as the answer specified here, right? Government policy is good for it accepts the aspirations of speakers of different languages. This does not follow from the action of the government. Action of the government is something else, and the choice is something else. Therefore, B and D, these seem to be the correct option. Why D seems to be the correct option? Why none of the above seems to be the correct option? There does not seem to be the correct option, is it not? None of the above has been wrongly marked. It should not be. I would rather it is the B option which should be the correct option. Do you agree with me or do you not agree with me? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you agree with me. Very nice. So now you see the problem here is that this government is a state government, right? And the passage that is talking about is basically in terms of the national government, the federal government. So that much mismatch is there. Nevertheless, at the state level, also the claims for linguistic minorities are recognized in the TMA Pi Association case, which we had done only TMA Pi, which you will remember. TMA Pi case that we had done. Basically, that the teachings of the TMA Pi case were that the minorities um, have to be identified on the basis of their numerical strength, number one, and secondly, the state is the unit based on which the minorities have to be identified. And now, if you club it with Article 29, which gives them a right to protect their culture, their language, and their religion, then religion in terms of 25, 26, now their culture and their language, then you will come to B as the correct answer, right? So though the passage may be talking about the federal government, but the overall, if you take everything into account, you can still say that so option B seems to be the correct. Now, what I'll do is I'll do it after the class is over because it will take some time in correcting. Now, 153 is entirely correct, so I won't take time on this. Then this is okay. This is 156th question. How does 351 affect the spread of Hindi in India? This is it imposes a duty on union government to promote Hindi's development. Yes, it does. It forces all states to adopt Hindi as they doesn't. It requires that all official documents be written in Hindi. It allows citizens. You can very well see what Article 150, 351 provides from the passage. We don't need to because it is factual in nature. We need not devote too much time on this. This is what is this counterproductive? No, no, we are not going to take it up. Now let us come to the logical reasoning part. Right? This we have exhausted. Please come to the logical reasoning part. Logical reasoning part. Please come to the logical reasoning part. Let's come to the logical reasoning part. Yes, I think yeah. Passage 9 is the logical reasoning passage. So you can come to that. Yes.
This passages talk about European leaders are concerned about the weakened NATO under President Donald Trump's second term and raising the concern about reliability of US extended deterrence and the need for Europe to establish its own nuclear deterrence. President Andrzej Duda has called for deployment of US nuclear weapon in Poland and
Mm-hmm.
citing the strained security circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And and Russia nuclear threats since invasion of Ukraine in 2022 have heightened nuclear relevance. And President Emmanuel Macron proposed extending France's nuclear deterrent to protect other European nations. And Germany Chancellor also suggested nuclear sharing with Britain and France while emphasizing the reliance on US nuclear umbrella.
Yes.
President Trump suggests negotiation with Russia and China to reduce nuclear arms, and the concern are there the US European security alliance raises fear of fragmented NATO and less effective deterrence,
Mm-hmm.
and the risk of their use increase undermine decade of global stability.
Yes.
Sir, this article discuss about the growing fear and uncertainty in Europe and other regions about nuclear security due to changing global politics after the Trump's return as U.S. president and Russia's aggression in Ukraine. And
Yes.
this passage talks about that now the Europe fears that NATO may not stay the same, and Poland wants US nukes, and France is open to sharing its nuclear weapons, and Russia's invasion of Ukraine and nuclear threats have made feel the all other countries which are neighboring nations of Ukraine feel very unsafe, and countries are now unsure if they can trust all security promises or not. And some of the countries like Japan and South Korea are also rethinking their options, and they are trying to make new policies, as they can't rely on old US policies. And if more countries go for nukes, the world could become more dangerous. And even though the war has been avoided since 1945, and this passage talks about how all the other countries have lost trust in USA.
Yes.
Under the Trump presidency, there has been the US commitment to its NATO membership has been under scrutiny, due to which European countries are debating whether they should develop their own nuclear deterrent or not, with Poland calling for the US nuclear deployment, along with France and Germany trying to explore nuclear sharing with other European nations. Not to mention, the Ukraine crisis had led many of the European countries to question their previous security assurances. The US policy of the extended deterrence has been a subject to many questions in the recent times, since how could they let Ukraine get invaded by Russia if they really are the protector of the European nations? Even if you just leave out NATO itself. So Europe is now considering nuclear deterrence as a whole.
Yes.
With global concerns rising, along with Japan and South Korea considering their own nuclear options to the threats from their regional neighbors, with China, with the rise in Iran's nuclear ambitions. This has raised many issues in the global world order, because the expanding nuclear arsenals of the countries in the world could destabilize global security as a whole and weaken the whole non-proliferation regime.
Hmm. Yes. Basically, you'll remember that the world has seen two groupings. One is the Warsaw Pact, the countries represented in the Warsaw Pact, and opposed experiment crumbled when the Soviet Union saw disintegration. And there were several republics which arose from what was the erstwhile Soviet Union. Now, Warsaw also concluded with that. Now, NATO and Warsaw basically were competing blocks. When Warsaw disappeared, where is the justification for NATO? One will one will want to think that if the Warsaw and NATO were basically had their origins in the Cold War hostility, which came about after the Second World War, then if the Warsaw Pact is gone, then what is the justification for the further continuance of the NATO? Right. Ukraine had an ambition that they will join the NATO. Now, Joe Biden did not permit that, but did not deny the claim of Ukraine also. Now, the Soviet Union, before the Ukrainian invasion and under President Mikhail Gorbachev's regime, basically had undertakings from the US, and that the there will be no further eastward expansion of NATO. Means there will be no NATO will not come towards Russia. Simple. Eurasian part of Russia, the NATO will not come there. But this was a warrant. This was a promise, which was kept only in the breach, and so much so that the Ukrainians declared their national goal was to join the NATO. Now this made the Russians very insecure, and they responded to it by invading the Ukraine. Now, in this backdrop, it's interesting that the Joe Biden administration, the policies followed by Joe Biden administration, have been turned around, turned turtle, and Trump has questioned the validity, continuing validity of NATO. Now, the moment you have the questions raised about the validity of NATO, then the principles that are enshrined in various treaties also come into question. What are those principles which come into question? The nuclear non-proliferation that was there. In 1968, this treaty came about. And when this treaty came about, there were only 4 nuclear powers. And subsequently, the number of nuclear powers rose and it became 9 nuclear powers, as the passage states it. Right? It was feared that the number of nuclear powers would go further. But then they employed a doctrine which is called a doctrine of extended deterrence, whereby they persuaded the non-nuclear countries to not take up the development of nuclear energy, or for that matter, nuclear weapons. And in exchange, you accept the extended security that we will provide you, that the nuclear powers will provide for being a non-nuclear country. One such promise was given to Ukrainians also, and the promise was, and fortunately, there was no occasion to put the promise into effect, because Russia, though threatened that it would use the nuclear weapons, but it never used the nuclear weapon. Right? So now the entire debate of non-proliferation has started once again, because the earlier security umbrella under which the non-proliferation was continued has started disappearing. Now this is a very changed global situation, very uncertain kind of situation has come about, and now it is yet to be seen as to how the threat of nuclear weapons is going to be met out in the absence of NATO. The author seems to suggest that the Russians, the Chinese, and the United States should come together and try to contain the proliferation of nuclear weapons. That now, this is what the article in essence talking about: the disappearance of the NATO and the consequential fallout of the non-nuclear, or I should say the non-proliferation, containment or non-proliferation, which was provided for under the earlier security architecture. When that architecture has collapsed, now how that a new architecture will be built on the ruins of the one which has collapsed, in order to save the world from use or threat of existence of nuclear weapons. This is what in effect the article talks about. Now, having said that, let us quickly run through what the article has. Let us quickly run through the questions that follow. Let us take up which questions have been marked how. This is not the one. Just 1 second, give me. Let me take out the correct. Yes. Yes. Question number 75 has been answered. Based on author's argument, which of the following must necessarily be true? This is already true. Global non-proliferation. This is, what is this? This is not the one. Okay, what is this? Just give me 1 moment. Let me correct this. Here. Now it has come. Yes, now it makes sense. So this is already answered. Correct response. Will not dwell on this. We'll come to this one. 76. Assuming the aim of extended deterrence is to reduce nuclear proliferation, which of the following would be the strongest argument that it will fail to achieve such an aim? So what the question says is that extended deterrence which of the following would be the strongest argument that it will fail to achieve extended nuclear deterrence is to reduce nuclear proliferation. All right. Extended deterrence prevents the nuclear proliferation. Then the author seems to ask as to how this will not come about. Means extended deterrence is not going to meet the goal of nuclear deterrence, nuclear proliferation, nuclear dissemination. It is not going to meet that goal. So he says European countries develop independent nuclear deterrence. In that case, US security architecture has gone. Not only NATO has gone, but that US security architecture also gone. US strengthens its commitment to NATO. If US strengthens the commitment to NATO, then the architecture stands. And there will be no debate on non-proliferation. Russia agrees to reduce its nuclear arsenal. Now, if Russia alone agreeing to it will not prevent, others should also agree to it. Then Japan and South Korea abandon plans to develop nuclear weapons. So which are assuming that nuclear deterrence is to reduce nuclear proliferation. Then Japan, that means they are abandoning the security guarantees that Japanese have received from the United States. Now the Japanese feel threatened by the Chinese as well as the Chinese on the one side, and the South Koreans similarly feel threatened by the North Korea on the one side and China on the other side. So they have an incentive to develop nuclear weapons. So this is also going to prevent the what we call as nuclear deterrence from preventing the extended deterrence may not be sufficient to reduce the nuclear proliferation. But European countries, if they develop nuclear deterrence, then definitely, because they are talking about a large number of countries, so this seems to be the most appropriate option, right? Let us go to the next question. Which of the following is the author most likely to agree with? The deployment of nuclear weapons by Poland would enhance global stability. And this is not what the author says. Deployment of nuclear weapons, not only the deployment, but even the existence of nuclear weapons is going to threaten the global stability. Then old security relations are no longer reliable in today's world. Second one. Of course, they are not reliable because NATO is on the verge of extinction, and that old security relationships were built under the NATO. Possession of nuclear weapons by Ukraine would have no impact on its security. Possession of nuclear weapons by Ukraine would have an implication because then Russia might not have been emboldened enough to invade Ukraine in the first place if they had the nuclear weapon, right? But then there was no need to invoke the nuclear weapon. Extended deterrence has been tested and proven effective. It has never been tested. It has always been there, but it has never been put to test. There is a line in the passage which clearly says so. So this one seems to be the second one. Old security relations no longer reliable seems to be the correct option. Which of the following, if true, would most weaken the author's arguments? This is European nations unanimously agree to rely on US for nuclear deterrence. Now, European nations are already agreed. They are saying, United States, please provide us the security architecture. Agree to rely on them. So if they rely on them, they are already relying on them. It is not that they are not relying. They are already relying. It is the US which doesn't give them the security guarantee. So this will not most weaken the author's argument because they are already relying on this thing, and US is reluctant to take over their charge of their security. So Russia announces its nuclear arsenal and renounces its nuclear arsenal and pledges non-aggression. That is the situation. Then most of the insecurities of the European nations will disappear. The European nations are very insecure that Russia might play the spoil sport with them, and US, if US becomes neutral, then they will have to come together and make a platform similar to that of NATO. Otherwise, individually they will not be able to counter the Russians. So nuclear So this is going to weaken the author's arguments. If Russians don't do it, then nobody else is doing it, right? The whole problem is because of the wake of the Ukrainian war. If the Ukrainian war is not there, then matter comes to an end. Why the whole thing will appear? That Poland independently develops a nuclear weapons program. If Poland independently develops a nuclear weapon program, this is what is expected. So it may not weaken the author's argument. France includes non-European nations in its nuclear sharing program. This seems tangential to the fact whether it weakens the author's argument or doesn't weaken the author's argument. Author's argument is that disappearance of NATO and the old architecture and the rise of new threats in the terms of in terms of the neo-imperialism, you can call it in a way, the aggressiveness that has afflicted the world, the new threats that have come about on territorial sovereignty, which was the cornerstone of international relations under the United Nations after the Second World War. Those principles of political sovereignty in the international sphere, those have taken a severe battering, and also because going forward from the article, Trump is saying that he will annex Greenland. So that is another one. That is another important thing that in this same line. Therefore, B seems to be the better option. That if Russia abandons its nuclear arsenal, then at least nuclear threat is gone. In this NATO and all these European states and the axis of China, Russia, and North Korea, that will also go away. And if that kind of thing happens, then it would work to weaken the author's argument, right? Now I come to which of the following, if true, would resolve the problem identified by the author. European nations agree on a shared nuclear deterrent independent of the US. They don't want this. This may not resolve the problem. What is the problem? Problem is of proliferation of nuclear weapons. Now all of them will become nuclear weapon states. So this is not going to resolve the problem. It is going to further escalate the problem. NATO countries unanimously reject all nuclear armament programs. If NATO countries reject all nuclear armament program, then in that case, whether it is going to resolve the problem, whether it resolves the problem, yes, it partly resolves the problem. If NATO countries unanimously reject all nuclear armament programs, it definitely resolves the problem. Then a new arms control treaty is signed by US, Russia, and China. This is what he says, that this is the solution, that the arms control treaty, because second one seems to be slightly what we call as tangential, because he is saying which of the following, if true, would resolve the problem. So the resolution of the problem may not come from this one, because nuclear proliferation is not only limited to European countries. Outside the European region, you have South Korea, you have Japan, you have a disturbed Middle East, you have South Africa, which was walked out of the talk of nuclear weapons. Likewise, you have Libya, you have Iran, So NATO countries is unanimously reject all the nuclear armament programs itself may not solve the problem, because the problem has many more ramifications than merely territorial ramifications limited to the European Union. A new arms control treaty, this is what the author suggests, that this is going to resolve the problem. They have to come under a new architecture, and that architecture should include these three powers, US, Russia, and China. What was earlier on NATO, led by the US, now it has fallen to the share of three countries, and Russia and China are the new entrants. Then Japan and South Korea abandoned their discussions on nuclear weapons. So this is peripheral. This may not resolve the problem, because true resolution of the problem would be, how do we control the nuclear weapons in the absence of NATO? When the old security architecture has crumbled, then what kind of new security architecture is going to ensure that the nuclear proliferation does not take place, right? Yes or no? Is that okay? Or do you want further clarification?
Yes,
Please
sir.
don't respond. Yes, at least you have responded. All right. 82nd, then there is 83rd. I'll not take it up because then extended deterrence is a belief system. What is the meanings? I will not take up. These developments threaten the global nuclear non-proliferation regime. This I'm not going to take up. Question of old security relationship can be trusted. What is the meaning of reverberate? I will not take it up. Then we will come to next logical reasoning paragraph. This is question number 87. Please come to this. Then quickly go through the paragraph and tell me what the paragraph talks about.
So this passage talks about our India's export and imports data. In
Yes.
February, India's exports fell by 10.9% and imports fell by 16.3%, which led to the trade deficit in 42 months. And this decline is worrying because both exports and imports were down. And experts have said that this could be due to a high base effect. And the Indian exporters are also concerned about the US imposing reciprocal tariffs from April 2nd, which would affect our exports in the USA. And the passage also talks about the gold imports, which fell by 62% due to high domestic prices and also oil imports, which dropped because India shifted sources after new US sanctions on Russian oils. And the USA is India's second biggest trading partner, and US is the only one among the five trading five largest trading partners of India, which India has a surplus and if the US reduces this surplus, India's over trade deficit may widen, and it could lead to the high trade deficit with the USA, and that's why India is looking to reduce dependence on the US and increase trade with other countries like China and the UK. So that's all from my side.
Yes, yes, yes.
So this passage talks about the heavy reliance on US for trade poses risk amid geopolitical uncertainties. Their export fell by 10.9% to $36.91 billion, while import dropped 16.3% to $50.96 billion, and trade deficit narrowed to $14 billion, in the smallest in 42 months. And simultaneously, decline in export and import raises concern. American imports are holding back order due to reciprocal tariffs set to take effect on April 2 announced by Donald Trump.
Mhm.
And US is India's second largest trading partner,
Mhm.
and India is urged to reduce reliance on US and explore markets like China and UK, and
Yes.
negotiation free trade agreement with UK present an opportunity to rebalance trade.
Yes.
And the looming reciprocal tariff could widen India trade deficit by 15% based on last fiscal year $241 billion shortfall.
Yes.
That's all.
This article is primarily about the decline in trade between India and the US due to the looming threat of reciprocal tariffs announced by the Trump administration. These tariffs have resulted in a lot of uncertainty in both US and India, those who trade with the US and India, due to which India's exports and imports from the US had actually fallen. The imports had fallen by 16.3%, and exports fell by 10.9% in February this year.
Yes.
This drop in exports raised a lot of concern as to how the trade with the US is going to go. while this did result in the smallest trade deficit in 3 years, so one cannot say that this is particularly a good thing.
Yes.
The article also focuses on how India should diversify its trading partners, and its import of gold and oil also fell
Yes.
due to US sanctions on Russian oil.
Yes.
It also emphasized on the shift in global trade dynamics due to Trump's America First policy, which is a very protectionist policy that focuses on protecting US industries through reciprocal tariffs and trade imbalances, due to which many countries are reconsidering their trade strategies, while India's second biggest trade partner is the US. Due to the pressure this policy has put on India and other countries, India is now diversifying its trade partners, and especially considering that this policy is affecting a lot of other countries. Many other countries also seeking different partnerships, due to which India has found a lot of opportunity to
Hmm.
expand its and diversify its trading portfolio.
Hmm.
That's
So, this article will exemplify how we can use hardcore general affairs magazines. Like, we can supplement what we read from there and further strengthen what we find here. For example, export performance in the current year. Now you know what is the export performance in the current year. Now regarding this, there will be a lot of stuff in the Pratyogata Darpan as to what is the export performance in which quarter and all that. So this article will give you a summary information. This is an editorial extract taken from the editorial, and this will give you a very summary and powerful summary of what is the overall situation in the month of in the first quarter, right? In terms of these lines. Likewise, it will tell you as to what is the what are the trade volumes that India has, what kind of economy it is, what kind of export import figures we have, right? This is also going to tell you that. Then then it will tell you as to the BTA negotiations that are going on between India and the United States. So by reading one newspaper article, you get so many things, right? Further, that which is India's second largest partner. Now, this information might be already available with you, and it gets revised. In the first one being China, and what is the difference between the first one and the second one? Not much. The second one is at 100, nearly 120 billion US dollars. Then it will also tell you that new round of sanctions has taken place against Russia, and because of that, even the import oil is also diversified presently. And what is the outcome of the BTA which is going to take place? That if the reciprocity is established, then there will be a 15% widening of overall trade deficit. And if there is a 15% widening of trade deficit, we already have a very bad situation of trade deficit. We should be having a trade surplus instead of doing that. And we definitely have a trade surplus in our services account, but we don't have a trade surplus in our merchandise account. And we should be having and to an extent, the services account surplus helps us to narrow down the trade deficit because of lack in export performance. So to that extent, our services export helps us in tiding over the crisis that could probably be created because of lack of the desired volume of merchandise exports to rest of the country. So you see, if you read one newspaper editorial, how many things it strengthens. Suppose you read Pratyogata Darpan for cover to cover, then there are various aspects of that Pratyogata Darpan issue that this article is going to put into the right place. Therefore, these, if you and when you revise, these basic facts which I have highlighted, 4, 5, 6 basic facts that I have highlighted, those must also be at your fingertips. When you revise, come back to it. You must highlight all this, save this article in PDF form, and use it as a source of knowledge, and to reinforce the information which you will get by going through Pratyogita Darpan and providing a particular context to it. Because Pratyogita Darpan, reading Pratyogita Darpan is not as interesting as reading a newspaper editorial, because the quality of the two articles is very, very different. They are very, very, the newspaper articles are very, very high standard newspaper articles compared to the articles that are published in these competitive magazines, right? So you see, that is how you can use these newspaper articles in strengthening your preparation. Not only in this examination, even in further examination, if suppose you sit for the competitive examinations after your law degree, then too these newspaper articles are going to greatly help you in every aspect of preparation. Newspaper is a very big teacher, and they have information for all aspects, and so many aspects are covered. Medical is covered, leisure is covered, your those who are bibliophile book lovers, for them also there is material. Those who are politically inclined, for them there is so much material. Legally inclined, there is so much material. Those who have interest in crime prevention, policing and all that, all those safety and security, those professionals also have. Which professional is not represented in the newspaper is not clear to me. Every segment of the society, from art to culture to current affairs to opinions, everything is there in newspaper articles. So newspaper articles have to be utilized very well, and they have to be utilized in conjunction with other sources, right? And not a single bit of important information should be missed out in any of these articles, which are curated articles, and you must have that. And the beauty about newspaper articles is, when you sit down to consolidate them, you can do it much many times faster than other articles. Why? Because there is a story that every article tells, and that story, when you understand fully by your relating to what is going on what is transpiring in the passage in the class, then that story sticks in the mind. When the story sticks in the mind, then other facts will also come. That kind of impact, the magnetism that is there in newspaper articles, that will help you in reinforcing the facts and figures and knowledge or information that you have acquired from other sources. So the article, as I have, you all of you have stated it very well. All of you have considerably improved in terms of presentations, and I'm very happy to note that this class is not the same class which we started. After only a few sessions, you people have improved so much in your presentations, and I'm sure going forward the effect will be telltale, in the sense that we will not be able to recognize whether where from we started and where we actually ended up, in terms of our understanding, in terms of our comprehension, in terms of our reasoning abilities and all that. Anyway, having said that, let me come directly to the question which we have to do. So which question we have to take up now? I'll share a different tab, and this is that tab that I share, and I think this is the one. This is 87th question is okay, so I'll not touch it. Now this will take some time in the moving. It usually does. When I switch the slides or switch the windows, when it takes some time for the machine to respond. This is okay. Let us come to the 89th question. 88th question is okay. Come to 89th question. Yes. Which of the following if to most weaken the author's arguments? So what is going to weaken the author's argument? What is the author's central argument? The author's central argument, what India should do in the face of Trump's reciprocity, insistence on reciprocity by Donald Trump. So what India should do? The author's prescription is that India should diversify. Why India should diversify? Basically, India should diversify because the if reciprocity comes about in terms of a bilateral agreement with the United States, which is under consideration, then in that case there will be a 15% further trade deficit. 15% trade deficit means what? 15% trade deficit, further trade deficit. We already have a trade deficit. That means there may be a problem of foreign exchange because imports have to be paid for in terms of dollar or a hard currency, and de-dollarization has not yet occurred. The dollar continues to be the prominent global currency. Therefore, if the if the if imports become more and exports stagnate, and 15% trade deficit is there because of lowering of exports from India because of the conditions requirements of reciprocity, then in that case we may land up in a foreign exchange problem, because then more and more foreign exchange depletion will take place, and that would not be good for India, because India's international transactions would be severely crippled, which is not the right thing for any nation. Foreign exchange crisis is not at all a right thing for any nation. Just as individuals are very severely crippled in lack of cash, it is the same. It is the international equivalent of rupee, that foreign exchange depletion can cause a serious problem to the country, and which has to be avoided. Now, if this is the main argument, now let us examine this argument on the basis of each one of these, which would work to weaken the author's argument. India successfully negotiates a free trade agreement with the UK. Does it weaken or does it strengthen the author's argument? I think it strengthens the author's argument. He is making a recommendation for this. Then US imposes additional sanctions on Russian oil producers. Now this is referred to in the article, but does not seem to be the centrally affect the arguments of the author. He is saying that because of the further sanctions on Russian exports of oil, India's import of Russian oil imports have got a beating. Now, how will that strengthen or this? Except for saying that this is also one of the reasons for the trade deficit that India had. So because the cheap Russian oil is no longer available. If cheap Russian oil is no longer available, then it is going to contribute to trade deficit. Except for that, it doesn't seem to be directly coming on the point of weakening or furthering the author's argument. India trade deficit with US narrows significantly. That does away with the requirement of diversification. Then there is no emergency to diversify. If that kind of thing comes about, then there is nothing to worry about. The central thrust of the article is that there is a requirement for diversity because of the requirement for reciprocity insisted upon by the United States. Gold prices in India dropped sharply. Now, if gold prices are dropping sharply, increasing consumer demand, and consumer demand for gold has gone up. Now, that is also a peripheral argument for the author's testing. Main argument has been that the United States has gone in for reciprocity. Because of that, there is subdued performance of imports as well as exports. Other reasons for subdued exports and imports performance is the rising prices of gold, and secondly the Russian oil availability or non-availability of Russian oil. These are the three main highlights of the passage. But if reciprocity is established, then the deficit is going to be furthered, and that will not be good for us. Come to question number 90. Which of the following, if true, would most strengthen the author's argument? India's trade imbalance with China increases significantly. So this is going to strengthen the author's argument, or this is peripheral to the author's argument? It is that China, if India's trade imbalance with China, the author actually says that India should have a negotiation with China as well as UK, right? So both UK and China, India should be negotiating with, and the diversification, the proposed diversification, may be attempted with these two countries, China as well as the United Kingdom. So if there is a trade imbalance with China and the trade imbalance increases, then it is going to weaken the author's argument. It is not going to strengthen the author's argument. Then India imposes reciprocal tariffs. US imposes reciprocal tariffs on Indian goods. Then that has already been brought about. This is going to only strengthen the author's argument. India successfully uh, India successfully diversifies its trade with China and UK. Now, this is going to strengthen the most because this is exactly the policy prescription of the author. Domestic gold prices remain stable, increasing imports. If imports go up, then the increased gap between the export and import will slightly narrow down because it is 10% stagnation, 10% lowering of exports, and nearly 1.5 times that figure, nearly 1.6%, 16% lowering of the imports. That has created a situation for us. Now we come to, based on author's arguments 91, which of the following must necessarily be true? So which is necessarily be true? India trade deficit with the US will widen if reciprocal tariffs are imposed. Of course, the author says that 15% widening will take place. Gold imports are unaffected by domestic gold prices. So if gold prices are very high, then gold imports are going to push down those prices, right? So gold imports are affected. Are in India, gold imports are unaffected by domestic gold prices. If gold prices are very high, then imports will be allowed. If imports are allowed, then the price stability will take place. So gold imports are affected by the domestic gold price. Definitely they are affected. Then oil imports from Russia have decreased since 2022. Oil import was 1%, and now since the invasion of Ukraine, the oil imports from Russia have gone up to 40%. So this is contrary to what the author says. So this will, what kind of impact will it have? It will not be necessarily true. So oil imports of Russia have decreased since they have increased since this thing. India's trade surplus with the US is smaller than its surplus with other other partners. So this trade surplus is actually bigger than with other trade partners. India has a very huge. But why did I take it up? This is correct. This is not correct. Why should I take it up? Why should I take up the second one, next one also? Reciprocal, I won't take it up. Then this is what? Unknown, this I won't take up. Then there is yet another passage on logical reasoning. Can we take it up tomorrow? Only one is left. Otherwise, we have effectively finished this test paper. Can we take it up tomorrow? Only one is left. What is there? What do you say? Yes or no? Beyond 2 hours will be different. Let us take it up tomorrow. How many people have not given me the assignment on vocabulary? Tanishka, have you turned in the assignment in the class? I have not checked it actually.
Yes, sir.
You have turned in. Rayan, I think, but then you have not. Have you given them? Have you submitted the assignment?
Yes, I already submitted.
All right, and Priyanka has also submitted. So all of you have submitted. Now I will make you exchange these lists, and I'm sure you will be revising them. Now, how do we start Pratyogita Darpan? We have to read the Pratyogita Darpans from December to November, or you can say, November. We have to read from December to November. How do we read? How do we start? What I propose is that let us take up Pratyogita Darpan from cover to cover. I mean, not those articles which are meant for personality development and all that, or the interviews of former candidates at the UPSC and all that. Let us skip those parts, which can be skipped easily. So, how do you take up Pratyogita Darpan? Some of the articles will be done in terms of the papers, and I think one reading of the articles will be necessary. I guess. What do you say? Pratyogita Darpan should be done, right? Yes or no?
Sir, I think you should provide Pratyogita Darpan to us, and we would read it by our own. And if we get any doubts regarding that, we can ask to you in class.
All right. Then what you are proposing is that instead of going through Pratyogita Darpan, we should be putting it in terms of the question papers only. This is what you are saying?
No, sir, I'm saying that we should read that on our own only.
Completely
Like,
on your own, and there is no need of touching Pratyogita Darpan, right? This is what you seem to be suggesting.
sir, I think Pratyogita Darpan is a magazine only.
Yes,
Am I right?
yes. It is a
Then,
magazine. It is a magazine devoted to current affairs, general knowledge.
okay, so then we can read magazine on our own. And if we get any doubts, we can ask you about them. Like we can fix any day that, Monday. If we take Monday, Monday would be devoted to Pratyogita Darpan doubts only. And if there are no doubts, we can continue our classes.
Yes. So Pratyogita Darpan need not be taken up for discussion, and needs to be taken up for discussion only in terms of the doubts, right? Tanishka, is that fine?
Yes, sir.
What do you say?
No, also put questions related to those article in mock paper also. It became
There should
easy
be
to.
there should be questions in the mock papers also.
Yes,
All right.
sir.
Important articles can be taken up.
Yes, sir. All the important
Important
articles.
important articles can be taken up. Not everything can be taken up because there are limitations, because sometimes the articles are very small in Pratyogita Darpan. Say 100 words article, what will you do of it? There will be nothing, no practical utility from our perspective in terms of the question paper. It won't be efficient to take such a small pieces. How do you even take them up? It creates a lot of logistical problem, practical problem it will create, right? So, all right, then we have this consensus that NCRT from 6th to class 12 you will be doing your own, and for those who have not got the specialization, like Rayan doesn't have a specialization for geography and humanities subjects, or for that matter for commerce subjects, then from 6th to 10th, right? Likewise, Priyanka and Tanishka don't have the specialization for 11th and 12th, so some specialization is there. Physics, chemistry, bio, three subjects are more deeply touched, so they need not bother about those 10th, 11th and 12th. But NCRT, please do on your own, because NCRT last year a large number of questions figured from the NCRT, right? I can tell you how many
Sir,
questions.
but according to my observation, they put only the 11th and 12th geography history questions only in CLAT mock test.
But you see, you don't have any problem so far as geography is concerned. I don't know whether you have history or not, right? I don't know what is the
Yes, sir,
situation
I
of.
have history. Last year, there was a passage about Jallianwala Bagh, and it's there in our 12th history only. And this year also it was about a movement led by Gandhiji, and that's also in our 12th history.
12th
They are
classes,
just they are just giving the syllabus from 11th, 12th history only,
NCRT.
as far I have observed. Yes, sir.
Yes, yes, NCRT. So, but you see, a person who has not studied history and now he takes up 11th, 12th history, that will be, I think, a little too expensive at this juncture. Instead of doing that, they can consolidate what they have already done in terms of 9th, 10th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. That would that would be more fruitful, I guess. Now, for example, you can't go into a subject which you have not studied. That would be slightly expensive. You have studied history, you have studied political science, it seems, and you have studied economics. These are the three subjects you have studied: history,
Sir,
politics.
I have studied geography, history, political science. That's it. I didn't study economics.
Economics you have not studied. So now studying economics will be quite a bit of challenge for you, is it not? So it is better to go through the economics articles and try to develop your understanding, is it not? I think 11th and 12th is you start reading the NCRT. It would become a lot of work. Yes or no?
Yes, sir. But as far I have observed, the 11th, 12th history, political science, or geography are just extended version of what we have studied till 10th only.
Mhm. Anyway, I leave the treatment of NCRT to you. But what I believe is that NCRT is important. Pratiyogita Darpan magazine is important, and plus you combine all this with newspapers. That should be sufficient so far as the current affairs portion is concerned, right? Is that okay? So far as the legal part is concerned, I think what we should be focusing on is number one, the newspaper, of course, in terms of meaningful articles, means articles which have a lot of information in them. Those kind of articles we should be doing, and which I am already on which I am already working. I enrich the passages. I try and enrich the passages which appear in the newspapers by supplementing them from various sources and then putting more and more information on them. I have started that process. Earlier, I used to take one entire article, but nowadays I rarely take one article. One article is taken and then something else is also put from lateral sources, and there the article is made into a holistic kind of article. It is not, though the acknowledgement is only for one at the foot of the article, but actually the article may be derived from two, three parallel sources. That kind of exercise, enrichment of legal reasoning articles is already underway, particularly from the, I think, last two papers I have been doing it. Logical reasoning articles are difficult to enrich in this way because they have a very different kind of format in which they appear. Legal is slightly different, but logical is slightly different. So in legal, the parameters are not very many. Parameters are limited by the statute, right? But in logical reasoning articles, it may go in this direction or it may go in that direction. It would be slightly difficult for that kind of treatment. Similarly, for current affairs article, also it is not very feasible. For English, there is a lot of scope of improvement because we can cover more and more stories of devoted to English literature. That would be very helpful to us, particularly the short stories. So, world's best short story writers, we should be already familiar with their work. So, that is one aspect on which we have to definitely improve upon. So, and then secondly, do as many book reviews as is possible. Book reviews, particularly those published in New York Times or published in the Guardian, they are of very high quality, and we should be looking at them. Legal reasoning, we will continue with what we are doing. Logical reasoning, probably we will continue with what we are doing. Logical reasoning, lot of paragraphs are from economy also, and lot of paragraphs are also from books also. But then anyway, if you have any suggestions for our improvement, then definitely please share them, because our only goal is to beat a national level competition and to score a rank or a position in one of the better national law universities, better NLUs. So more and more you think about it, more and more you share about it, more and more you talk about it, the more and more we become efficient, more and more productive we become. Therefore, please do share in terms of changing the strategy that we should keep making as we keep going along. All right. Now, today, since you have already finished the assignment on the one of the preceding mocks, I will put the assignment today or tomorrow to you with respect to the vocabulary part, right? And besides, you have also got to do the mocks starting from nearly 10th to the 50th. I think 40 mocks you have to do, particularly Priyanka. And Rayan has also not done them, though Rayan is appearing for many other examinations also. So for him, it's optional. He can do as much as he can. And if he can't, then no need of getting overwhelmed by all this, because it is, at best, I guess it is peripheral for him. So it's okay. Whatever he contributes in terms of word lists and all that, that is also welcome. So that is not at all a problem. ठीक है बेटा, फिर let us I will forward the next article next paper. And from 60th paper onwards, I think 60th or 61st paper onwards, we have made it very systematic in the sense that we have included 4 passages on English, 4 on current affairs, 4 on the sections that we have, and 2 on quantitative aptitude. Right, quantitative aptitude we are already working on it, and hopefully we will have the proper. I'll work in such a manner that I provide you half an hour class of quantitative aptitude every day, because sometimes the paper is very easy, then you will not be able to score quantitative part. So if you go unprepared, merely thinking that my quantitative part is not good and I should not focus too much on it, it can harm us very badly in terms of a strategy. Our strategy should be that the paper will be very easy and we have to attempt that. And if if your strategy pays off, then it will be very rewarding. If the paper is difficult, then it is difficult for everyone. It hardly matters, right? In terms of that section of quantitative aptitude. All right. So expect better papers going forward, and keep coming up with new suggestions and new ideas so that we can improve further. One way of improving further, of making further improvements, is to minutely analyze the previous year papers. Previous year papers you must be having in your compilation also. Even otherwise, you can visit the website gpsdadiya.ac.in. There you have the papers listed there. You can visit the website and see the papers. So, all right, beta, then see you tomorrow at the same time, right?
Thank you, sir.
Good day, sir.
Okay, beta, bye bye.